And I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here. I was thinking about this as I came down from my home community of Woodbridge up in the city of Vaughan this morning, that it's really refreshing. It's refreshing to actually take real roads to the Ontario Good Roads Association Conference instead of doing this as we have over the past couple of years through Zoom or other digital platforms. And it is great to be here. It's great to be back with you. I was also thinking that I believe the last time that I had this honor was all the way back in 2017, when at that point I was Minister of Transportation. Hard to believe that many years have passed. So it's also really amazing for me to acknowledge that the OGRA is 128 years old. It's a remarkable track record of incredible advocacy, dating back to a time before Ontario even had roads. You think about that. Your reason for existing in the first place was because even in the days before cars, you knew that if we were going to succeed as a province, Ontario needed to have a much better system of roads. Your organization took the lead on that. I think about all of my times being in conversations as Minister of Transportation, and again, the advocacy and the advice and the guidance coming from OGRA has always been exceptional. Today, of course, the challenge has shifted from simply building roads to improving roads and keeping them in a state of good repair. And from building a province to improving the province and keeping its economy strong and its quality of life strong and resilient as well. Now, as many of you will know, I think, in just about 50 days, the people of Ontario will be going to the polls. Just about 50 days, but who's counting, right? Which, when you get down to it, when you think about what election campaigns really are, they are a debate on which road the province should take for our collective future. I want you all to know that Ontario Liberals are determined to take the high road. We will run on our plan, and I'm happy to share some of the details of that plan with you today. I want to talk a little bit, of course, given the nature of why we're all here, a little bit about focusing on roads and on our relationship with municipal partners, and how we can work together to rediscover and rebuild what made Ontario strong, and how we can move our province forward again. First, I want you to know that Ontario Liberals will act quickly to build, protect, and maintain a system of good roads in Ontario. Second, we believe that we need to have a path to the future by getting even more people moving safely. And third, before any of that can happen, we need to fix the damage that's being done by the Ford Conservatives. I want you to think about this for just a quick moment. This has not been a government that thinks ahead. These are the guys who ripped electric vehicle charging infrastructure out of our GO Transit parking lots and rolled back the rebates for electric vehicles and home charging, and then claimed that they wanted Ontario to become a global leader in EV battery technology. They dumped more responsibilities down to municipalities while clawing back transfers, and so much other damage that's being done. Where I come from, that's not stable, thoughtful, competent government. It's reactionary, fickle, and irresponsible government. As a former Minister of Transportation, I had the honor of serving in that capacity for 3.5 years. I know that Ontario's roads need to stay on track. As Premier, I will make sure that we make the investments in roads, bridges, and highways where and when it makes sense. For example, we'll widen Highway 401 at targeted bottlenecks where we know that commuter traffic regularly comes to a crawl. We'll finish the Morriston Bypass at long last, an announcement that I was so proud to make while still serving as Minister of Transportation, so that we can improve traffic on Highway 6 between Guelph and Hamilton. And we'll bring back incentives to buy electric vehicles so Ontario can truly, once again, be a leader in the production and adoption of the kinds of cars that people want and our world needs. In rural and northern Ontario, we'll also get roads back on track. For example, we'll work to advance the proven 2+1 highway model to support safe passing on major northern Ontario highways. We'll work with the OGRA. This is something that I have been talking with Scott and the team about for so many years. We'll work with the OGRA and interested municipalities to bundle procurement to support building new bridges and rehabbing the existing bridges that we have. We'll make sure that the 4-laning of Highway 69 is completed as urgently as possible. These projects and so many more will be given top priority, the kind of priority that they deserve, that we need them to have. Which brings me to my next point. How are we going to get even more people moving, as I said earlier, safely in the months and years ahead? Because as I think we're all aware, there's much more that we can be doing in this province to make our roads safer. And I say this acknowledging that our province has had an extraordinarily strong track record of road and highway safety, but I believe we can do more. Ontario Liberals will want to encourage safer winter driving. So we'll introduce a refundable tax credit of $75 per winter tire and $100 per studded tire in Northern Ontario. In towns and cities across Ontario, we'll make it safer for cyclists and pedestrians to get around by setting a goal to achieve Vision Zero, or zero fatalities and serious road injuries. I know this is an issue that the OGRA has been working on for quite some time. Working with you, we'll do this by supporting common sense road designs that improve safety and reduce collisions, like advanced walking signals, improved street lighting, and turning radiuses. Above all, an Ontario Liberal government will move the cause of safety forward by being an exceptional and reliable partner for Ontario's municipalities. In fact, I think that we've already made progress in this regard as a political party, and here's what I mean by that. Among our candidates who are currently running in different communities across this province, we have more than 10 former and sitting municipal and regional councillors and wardens, including Jeff Lehman in Barrie, Mary Margaret McMahon here in Toronto and Beaches East York, and Granville Anderson running in Durham. All of these individuals are focused on repairing the relationship and rebuilding and enhancing and nurturing the trust between municipalities in the province, the trust that I feel has been irreparably damaged since the Ford Conservatives meddled in the last municipal election. Here's what we'll do, and these are just examples. We'll respect and work with municipalities as partners. As Premier, I will never use the notwithstanding clause and use MZOs as a weapon to trample over local decision-making like the Ford Conservatives have done. We'll also review the potential to upload responsibility for critical transportation infrastructure, roads and bridges and highways, back up to the province. You know this. There are women and men in this room today and at this conference who were there when so much of that infrastructure was downloaded a generation ago by a former Conservative government. When I was running for leader, I made this commitment, and I stand by this commitment as someone who is running to be your Premier. Now, I know that for a lot of people, this kind of competent, thoughtful approach to governing isn't necessarily headline-generating information. But I've always thought that it was far more important for a leader to do things rather than simply being seen to do things. And I'm betting that after 4 years of the shallow optics of billboards and buck a beer, of missteps and of flip-flops, that Ontarians are ready for change. So let me dig in a little bit deeper and talk about change. I've told you, for example, what we would do, but now I want to make sure that it's clear about some of the things that we won't do, which brings me to my third and final point: fixing the potholes left over by the Ford Conservatives. Let me say, first of all, that Ontario Liberals, if elected, will not build Highway 413. I was very proud as Minister of Transportation to pause this unnecessary highway the first time. And if elected in 50 days, we will stop it once and for all. And there's a simple reason for that. I simply cannot justify a highway that I believe will cost all Ontario taxpayers more than $10 billion to build, but would save only a handful of drivers potentially 30 seconds a trip, while at the same time paving over forever wetlands and valuable farmland and destroying large parts of Ontario's greenbelt. I do support building highways, expanding highways, building up roads and bridges, as I said earlier, where they make sense and when they make sense. But Highway 413, which is undoubtedly a conservative boondoggle in the making, is reckless and wrong, and Ontario Liberals will stop it once and for all. In addition, we'll focus on investing in transit and building more walkable, livable communities, investing the significant savings from that unnecessary highway and building instead new schools in communities that are growing quickly and repairing the schools that we have in existing neighborhoods. Think about this over the past couple of years. My daughters attend publicly funded schools. Billions of dollars taken from this reckless highway and invested in schools everywhere so that the windows in your kids' and grandkids' classrooms can actually open, so that the water your kids and my kids are drinking is safe for them to drink, so that our schools can have modern HVAC systems to keep the air that our kids and frontline education workers are breathing every day, again, safe and healthy. This is what Ontario Liberals will focus on rather than building that highway. We know that our province has other, more pressing needs, in particular thanks to the neglect that we've seen for the past 4 years. As I said, like building up our schools, building up our hospitals, and yes, improving existing roads and bridges and rails. We need to strengthen the essential services that everyday Ontarians and their families rely upon to live healthy, happy, and successful lives. And stop bending the rules the way the Ford Conservatives do to help and support only the wealthy few. I think about my parents and my grandparents an awful lot. My parents still live close to where me and my wife are raising our daughters, just a few minutes away. My mom is 80. Please don't tell her that I just admitted how old she is. And my dad is 83. I think about my grandparents, all 4 of my grandparents, who I was so lucky to be close to as I grew up. Our parents and grandparents built a province where women and men who worked hard and who played by the rules could get ahead. And this was true in my family. My dad's dad, my grandfather, Alfonso, came to this country in 1951 from Italy. His wife, my grandmother, and his sons stayed back home. He came here to build a better life for himself, which I know is such a quintessential Canadian and Ontario story. Now, he worked in construction as a laborer on sewer and water main projects. He was physically very, very small, but he worked so hard. He had the heart of a lion, and he had a completely outsized personality to match. He got really badly injured on a job in about 1953 here in Toronto when the site that he was on collapsed, broke his hip, broke many of his ribs, and he walked for the rest of his life with a brutal limp because of those injuries. Now, instead of firing him, which would have been standard practice in that era, his boss decided that he respected his work ethic, and he kind of liked my grandfather. So he kept him working, kept him on the payroll, and moved him to be a handyman at the company head office. So I think back on this story, and I realize that my grandfather was lucky. He got to keep his job, and he got to keep the dignity that comes with having a job, being able to support oneself, being able to support one's family. Now, a little while later, about 6-7 years later, my dad followed his dad, came to Canada in 1958, and my mom came here from Scotland in 1961. So my parents met here in Ontario. They fell in love, they got married, they started a family. They eventually settled into a really great middle-class neighborhood in Etobicoke, in Toronto's West End. My parents worked hard, they sacrificed, and it's true, they prospered. This province of ours gave them every single chance to succeed, and they took full advantage without ever taking it for granted. My dad worked in construction management, and he retired at the age of 78. Retired the first time at 73, stayed home for a year and decided he needed to go back to work and worked for 4 more years. A career that spanned 57 years. A career that focused on helping so many families in this province become homeowners. My mom built a wide-ranging career. At various times, she was a legal assistant and early childhood educator, and ultimately she opened up, later in her career, her own small business here in downtown Toronto, and that small business sold fresh pasta and made espresso. I tell people everywhere I go, it's only in Ontario that a Scottish parent could open the pasta shop and make the espressos, but I still miss the coffee that she made me, best coffee that I've ever had. So here's the deal. It wasn't always easy for my parents, but they stuck with it and they stuck by it. And again, our province gave them a real shot. For example, when we Del Duca kids were young, we had access to incredible public services close to home, great public health care, a terrific public elementary school that was literally only a few steps away from our backyard. Most importantly, my parents made it so crystal clear to me and my sister and my brothers that nothing held us back, that we had the potential to go as far in life as our talent and our effort and our dedication would take us, that any one of us could succeed. And here's the reason that I share my family's story with you this morning. Because all of it, every single bit of it, the economic dignity that my grandfather earned, the good jobs that led to a great life for my parents, the public schools and the libraries and the health care that sustained me and supported me and gave me and my siblings the very best start in life, all of that vision, all of that dream, all of those core public services that are the floor that we are supposed to be able to stand on as Ontarians, all of it is at grave and unnecessary risk. All of it is in jeopardy because of the misguided decisions and priorities of the Ford Conservatives. Too far out of reach for far too many Ontarians, regardless of how hard they work. And I refuse to accept that my daughters, Talia and Grace, 14 and 10, and your kids and your grandkids should grow up in a province that gives them less opportunity than I had a generation ago. So we, as Ontario Liberals, have introduced some new ideas that I believe will help ensure that Ontarians get the chance to have real economic dignity, like meaningful protections for gig workers to make their work safer and to ensure that their pay is fair. Portable benefits, a workplace benefits situation or policy or idea where the benefits are not attached to the working situation but to the worker. A safety net that the worker can rely upon throughout their career, regardless of how many different times they switch employers, regardless of whether or not they're self-employed or in the so-called gig economy. To give them that self-confidence, to give them that peace of mind, and to ensure that they can retire with dignity. A dynamic, regionally adjusted living wage, not a minimum wage, but a living wage, because I am convinced that we will never achieve maximum economic dignity for Ontario's workers if we are always talking about the minimum, always engaging in that never-ending race to the bottom. Our plan also includes the elimination of corporate taxes for 2 full years for the small businesses in this province that were hardest hit during this pandemic. And these are just some of the ideas that are included in the Ontario Liberal Plan for Economic Dignity. I don't want our province to be dragged backwards any further to a time when the only people who could afford economic dignity were those who were rich enough to buy it. We can do better, and here in Ontario, we must do better. So as I wrap up my remarks today, let me just say that our province, from my perspective, has long operated on a simple and yet profound principle, that if you work hard, if you show up, that we'll have your back. The taxes that you pay go into the services that you need and that your family needs, like healthcare and education. And yes, roads and bridges and rails and highways and transit, so that you can get to work and back home again to your loved ones on time. Those tax dollars that are hard-earned in this province should not be going to boondoggles that favor the rich. The benefits of those dollars need to be returned to the people who earned them in the first place. This is what a competent and thoughtful and responsible provincial government would be focused on. Because that's not just a way to build up an economy, though it does that. And that's not only a way to create better and more vibrant communities, though it does that too. It's an act of respect. It's an act of caring and compassion. And it's an ironclad way to guarantee that the next generation, my kids and yours, my grandkids at some point in the future, and yours, have a shot at a great future, a real shot at a great future, even better than the one that we had. You know this already. You build a good road by fixing what's broken, maintaining it so that it stays in good working order, and having a vision for making it even better. And I don't think building a good province is any different. Once again, I believe that if you show up, if you work hard, if you're dedicated, your province, your provincial government, your premier should have your back. And what's more, I believe in expanding opportunity for all Ontarians. These are my bedrock beliefs. So I am, to use a phrase that is particularly appropriate for this occasion, well, I'm excited and I'm confident about the road ahead. Because I believe that Ontarians in every corner of this province can see a need to elect a strong, competent, caring, and compassionate, committed provincial government. One that will protect the dignity of an honest day's work. One that will always put everyday people first. One that will look forward with determination and hope and optimism. I want us to build an Ontario that works as hard as Ontarians work. I want us to build an Ontario that cares as much as Ontarians care, and I want to build that Ontario with you together.